Good morning, everyone. This is Al-Shamari, KPI Corporate Communication. I'd like to welcome you for the first virtual town hall between KPI and KUFPEC. And but first, let's watch the safety video.
Safe return to the workplace during COVID-19 pandemic. Symptoms: fever, cold chills, cough and sneeze, headache. Help prevent the spread with these simple steps. Hand hygiene. Wash your hands frequently for at least 20 seconds with soap and running water, making sure that you wash in between fingers thoroughly. Physical distancing. To prevent the spread of COVID-19 transmission from person to person, keep a distance of 2 meters, 6 feet between yourself and others. Be smart. Stay safe. Stay healthy. How to wear a mask. Make sure your mask covers your nose and mouth completely. Help to limit the spread of COVID-19. Wear your mask at all times in the workplace and public places. After removing your mask, discard it in a closed bin. Avoid contact. Avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth when you're not sure if your hands are clean. Cough or sneeze into your elbow. To prevent the spread of virus droplets, cough on your elbow or sneeze in a tissue. Stop COVID-19. Agility in adversity.
And now I'd like to welcome KPI President and CEO, KUFPEC Acting CEO, for his opening remarks and speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our first virtual town hall. Many of you are connecting from places from around the world, and I'd like to welcome you especially. I'm aware that it's about 2 o'clock in the morning in Calgary, so if there's anyone from Calgary joining us, welcome as well. No matter how far apart we work, our teams remain collaborative and supportive of each other. Yesterday in Kuwait, we returned to work after having completed over 100 days, working almost exclusively from home. It has been an extraordinary experience, and I'd like to reflect on that. 111 days ago, the World Health Organization classified COVID-19 as a pandemic. We implemented our crisis management protocols to confront an existential threat to our physical health, our economic system, and indeed the fabric of international society. The global economy is now in a recession. Oil prices have cratered like never before. And for the first time in history, OPEC and non-OPEC producers have collaborated to take 10 million barrels of oil a day of production off the market in an effort to balance supplies. Oil companies are battling for their survival. And countries that have slowly stepped out of lockdown are now walking a thin line between economic recovery and preventing new outbreaks. In the meantime, physical distancing rules have changed the norms of human interaction. We have had to work from home, where our spouses, children, and sometimes even our pets compete for our attention and for the space within this arrangement. It's been a tough 111 days of adversity, yet we persevere through our agility to adapt. Our crisis management teams drove the efforts to assess the ever-changing situation and guarantee business continuity. Our IT and tech support professionals maintained the internet and telecommunications infrastructure that was vital to our critical functions. Our communication professionals informed us about COVID-19 precautions and announcements from the local authorities. Meanwhile, our financial teams managed to complete the audited financial statements on time, rework a budget under extreme duress, and make sure the companies had cash to meet their requirements. And throughout all of this, HR ensured that all salaries were paid on time. Between the two companies, we held a dozen board meetings, and 37 crisis management team meetings, all held virtually. Most importantly, our business segments worked uninterrupted. Kuwait Oil's blending plants in Antwerp and in Milan continued non-stop. Our refineries in Milazzo and Nissan continued in their production. And our new refinery under construction in Duqm is now over 60% complete. Almost all of our Kuwait service stations throughout Europe remained open throughout the crisis, and well over 1,100 of the convenience stores at our stations, which are now capturing market recovery, are guaranteed groceries and other food essential items to the communities that they serve. Moreover, in KUFPEC, we maintained our production at over 106,000 barrels of oil a day, and we just announced a significant recovery at our discovery at our Gaysum concession in Egypt. This discovery follows nicely after the giant discovery that we had in Langliba in Malaysia last year. And in Norway, we started powering our offshore operations with clean energy sourced from onshore. I'm also proud to see our people come together with their communities and volunteer for many initiatives while continuing to work from home. In Kuwait, KUFPEC employees volunteered to support the medical frontliners conducting mass testing at Mishr Fairgrounds. Other employees provided food and gas cylinders to low-income families in Jalib al-Shuyukh, one of the neighborhoods that is still under lockdown. And in Italy, one of our colleagues, a trained psychologist, provided online support for individuals suffering from stress and anxiety. Our team in Northwest Europe delivered medicine to the elderly and provided food to low-income families. Our IDS sites in Spain offered free meals to truck drivers, many of whom were transporting essential needs across borders during this lockdown. These initiatives demonstrate our commitment to our communities and our true sense of purpose. They show Kuwait and KUFPEC in their corporate agility in spite of adversity. Past 111 days have made us reinvent ourselves as a different type of oil company. The next 111 days will test our resolve to realize this new future. We have an opportunity to reset the course of our strategy, and I'm counting on your support to achieve it. Before I conclude and let my colleagues detail the performances that we have achieved, I thank each and every one of you for your hard work, your dedication, and your drive. The challenges ahead are numerous and difficult, but by working together, we can surmount them. That's why I've chosen the slogan for this campaign, agility in adversity, to describe exactly what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nasser, for your speech. I'd like to remind all of you, if you have any question, please send it to us through the chat for all the management. And now it's time for KPI Marketing Performance during COVID-19 with the KPI EVP Marketing, Mr.Azzam Al-Mutawa. Fadal Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues across the globe, welcome. I hope you and families are safe and well. My speech is about KPI marketing performance during the COVID-19. I will also share some highlights on last year's performance and future prospects post-COVID. While I'm talking, we will illustrate this with a slideshow about the way of COVID impacted our lives, emptied our offices, hit our businesses, and how KPI continued its operations. Let me start by thanking you all for your efforts and dedication in achieving an outstanding marketing performance during the 1920 financial year. The marketing OUs recorded an operating profit of $230 million, which was $50 million higher than the budget target given the impact of COVID since February. That makes it a remarkable year for KPI marketing. We also succeed in continuing the growth of our business organically, and also we made major retail acquisitions in Spain and Belgium. We won new high-volume motorway sites in Italy. we expanded the capacity of the loop plants in Antwerp. Talking about the marketing performance during the COVID, the recovery in sales and revenues growth is currently in its early stages. We see positive signs in retail and direct global cards and lubricant businesses. In Italy, the retail volumes have already recovered from -65% versus last year's levels to around -15% versus this year's in recent weeks. KP Northwest Europe volumes have recovered from -55% to -19% level. The shop turnover was hit, but now is even 25% higher than the previous year. The global cards volumes have recovered from -50% to a 10% or even less now. The KPI jet fuel sales have been the hardest hit with the volumes. It reached -85%, and we expect a slower recovery than for the other businesses. Now, for every challenge, also a new opportunity. We aim to capitalize on the recovery in our European markets, improve liquidity through cash generation, build a strong, sustainable business while many competitors are struggling. Focus on developing digitalization, which enabled a rapid move from home working, allowed continued business operations, and also to be more customer-centric in order to understand and serve their needs better. To achieve these objectives, the marketing businesses are fully determined to do whatever it takes to deliver. Finally, I want to convey to you all that we are committed to the health and safety of all our employees and stakeholders, making sure that they are part of our safe, reliable, robust, and sustainable business. We will continue to work together as a team to improve our performance while navigating carefully through our market uncertainty and volatility. We recognize there is a high degree of uncertainty through the recovery, future social interaction, and ways of working. Therefore, we intend to draw on a positive elements that we have emerged during the emergency. Thank you again for your commitment, hard work during the past and the current challenging period. Now, as a second part, let me share with you a short video about the KPI Create Lives during the COVID and how we reacted and maintained a positive team spirit and a close and unified company even when working remotely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for your speech. And again, if you have any question for EVP Marketing or the President, please send it via chat. And as for KPI Refining Performance during COVID-19, we have Mr. Sulaiman Al-Marzouqi KPI EVP Manufacturing. تفضل أبو سلطان, the mic is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning all. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning and thank you for joining us. I would like to talk about our refining business in KPI. But first of all, I want to thank everybody in the manufacturing business that we continued during this crisis of COVID and the drop of the oil pricing, continued our operations in Vietnam and Milazzo and continued our project in Oman. Talking about the refining global business during this crisis, it was dropped. The revenues dropped globally between 25% to 50%. In SRP, Vietnam, the revenue dropped about 36%. In Milazzo, there was a drop about 20%. However, the borrowing was increased globally between 5 to 10%. In SRP, there was no borrowing, it was 0%, and also in Milazzo. If we looked at the Asian refineries, production output was dropped around 22%. In Vietnam, in SRP, there was an increase about 0.1%. In Milazzo, there was a drop about 54% in the output of the production. However, in the utilization of the refinery, by the end of 2019, SRP has utilization of 60%. Today, by June, end of June, it was about 93%. So our utilization increased. Our mechanical availability increased from 80% to 95%. In Milazzo, the operation availability 99%, and the mechanical availability is 98%. When we looked at the capital expenditures in Asia, was dropped by 21%. In SRP, we dropped the capital expenditures by 55%. In Milazzo, it was dropped about 52%. The Asian refineries deferral of capacity increase projects, about 50% of the projects were deferred, none in SRP, and 70% in Milazzo. And the delays of the maintenance and turnaround in the Asian refinery was between 1 to 6 months. In SRP, there were no maintenance delays or turnarounds planned. In Milazzo, there is a deferral of 6 months. If we look at the gross margins in the Asian refineries, it's actually in the negative $0.3 per barrel. We look at SRP, it is by June is around $6 per barrel based on the current price method. In Milazzo, the reliability was increased 1%, and the gross margin was dropped by 0.7%. So if we looked at technically, the refineries, our refineries is doing well in comparison with the global refineries and the Asian refineries. So I would like to thank everyone in these refineries taking the opportunity to continue our operations globally. So thank you for listening. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sultan, for your speech. Again, I'm receiving a lot of questions via my WhatsApp. So please, again, send it through the chat icon. And now for KUFPEC performance during COVID-19 with Mr. Saeed KUFPEC VP Operations, Acting VP Finance and Admin. The mic is yours, Abu Mohammed. تفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صبحكم الله بالخير. البداية أود أرحب فيكم بإخواني وأخواتي وزملائي في شركة كوفبك وكي بي آي في هذا الحدث الأول لهذه السنة، وعسى الله يحفظكم جميعا. Dear colleagues, KPI and KUFPEC, I would like to thank all of you in area office and head office during the crisis, showing a great commitment and effort. Also, I would like to welcome back some of our area office started opening back safely, like China, Indonesia, Pakistan, Australia, and Norway. It's good to be back. I have a few points I would like to bring your attention. The first one, the update of 2040 strategy. Last year, KBC has reassessed the 2040 KBC strategic direction. Now, the new strategy focus, most importantly, the key element, most of them. The first one is maximize financial return to KBC by improving and optimizing the current portfolio. The second element, which is most important, the selective of attractive acquisition opportunity, partnering with the major oil company. The second point I would like to share with you, the excellent effort during the cost reduction and optimization. As all you know, the oil price crashed recently. KBC requests all K company to reduce their budget in 2020. The cost optimization measure resulted in the following: the capital reduction by $1.12 billion, equivalent to 58% of the approved budget for 2020 budget. This is a great job from all of you guys. The second one, the operating expenditure reduction by $138 million, which is equivalent to 20% of the approved budget of 2020. The G&A reduction of the expenditure reduction by $20 million, equivalent almost about 11% of the approved budget. Without a great effort from all of you, we could not have reached these numbers. With regards the operation, the main highlight, the discovery, as Nasser mentioned in his speech, the discovery in Egypt. I would like to congratulate the area office in Egypt to the recent discovery by achieving first production from Gayson 4, which is located in Gulf of Suez. The well was drilled in Nokhal formation and produced about 2,000 barrels per day crude oil. With regards the total production for all our assets in KUFPEC, alhamdulillah, we managed to maintain our production level at the end of the second quarter by 106,000 barrel equivalent per day, compared to our target production, which is 102,000 barrel oil equivalent per day. So the current price we're gonna face is a big challenge. The big challenge for us this year and next year. So what we want from you to focus with our business partner to maximize our revenue, minimize our cost as possible. I have no doubt, with a great teamwork, with a great overcome of this crisis, to come stronger and at other end. بالنهاية أبي أشكر جميع العاملين على جهودهم الكبيرة خلال هذه الأزمة والتفاعل الإيجابي في هذا الحدث. عسى ربي يوفقكم ويطول بعمركم ويعطيكم الصحة والعافية. مشكورين.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for your speech. One of the questions I've received, Nasser, why am I not wearing my mask? Actually, I do have my mask, but I'm keeping the social distancing for now. So it's time for Q&A, and the Q&A will be controlled by the President and CEO. Nasser, if you can start the questions and direct the answers.
Thank you, Awdah. As Awdah said, questions that go to her WhatsApp we'll never see, so please make sure that you send questions through the chat, and I've been getting quite a few of those. Start off with the first one, which says, good morning. Has the long-term strategic plan 2040 scope changed as a consequence of COVID-19? This is from KPI question. I'll answer that question directly. We just finished updating the long-term strategic plan for KPI into 2040, and that entails a number of things, differences from the previous 2040 strategy. The new plan was approved by the Supreme Petroleum Council in February, and we're in the process of beginning to roll it out when COVID-19 hit. The differences between the previous plan and the current one are primarily in the international refining side, where the previous plan had called for 1.3 million barrels of refining capacity outside Kuwait. The new plan looks at the refining capacity that we have now and are building between Milazzo Nissan refinery and petrochemical project and the one coming in Duqm, inshallah, and says that that is enough for us right now. We are not planning additional refining capacity outside Kuwait in the immediate future. We'll obviously keep an eye out for any additional refining capacity that makes sense if it's tied to KEC. But that's the major difference, is we're not really looking at that growth in refining anymore for quite obvious reasons in terms of refining capacity around the world. On the marketing side, it hasn't really changed fundamentally. We continue to sustain our position in marketing in Europe and expand it smartly and gradually. We also look for additional opportunities in new markets that have a synergistic tie-in with the rest of the business. So that's from the KPI side. I'll answer the question that was asked from KPI. It hasn't been asked on the KUFPEC side, but I'll answer it anyway. From the KUFPEC side, the business plan remains in a targeted growth scenario where we are not setting numbers on production targets that we have to meet by a certain period of time, but instead maximizing the value of our existing assets, making sure that we get the maximum, the most value out of these assets, and also looking at targeted growth opportunities. So there would be new acquisitions and that we might look at in the future. During this time right now, during COVID, at least during this year, we see that there's sufficient disconnect in the market that it's going to be difficult to come up with strong valuations for assets for new acquisitions. And I know that there's another question that was asked about, is this the right time to buy assets on the upstream side? You can always buy, if you can buy an asset from a distressed seller, it's always the right time to buy it from a distressed seller. But the problem is you're looking at a scenario where nobody really is quite confident about what oil prices will do over the next couple of years. So making a strategic bet on a major new acquisition will carry some risk with it. It doesn't mean that we won't do it if we find the right asset and the right price, but it is right now quite a bit of our focus is on preserving the business and maximizing revenue coming out of the business. So that's answering two of those questions. There's a question I will toss over to Sultan. It refers to the Vietnam refinery. You mentioned some things in your remarks about it, but the question is, what can it do to revive itself on the financial side, in terms of loans, paybacks, so on and so forth? We understand the refinery has gone, as a result of COVID and other things, has had negative performance recently. So what are we doing about that?
Thank you, Nasser, and thank you for the question. And if we talk about the financials of NSRB and how can we revive the financials, NSRB engaged the international consultant for the financial restructuring, where all the partners are now looking at different options, and the financial restructuring consultant talking to the lenders, trying to amortize some of the payments and trying to give a chance for NSRP. Currently, the technical side of it, we said there's a great improvement in the utilization, in the operation availability, in the mechanical availability. It's all with good numbers. And the OPEX margins is within the market, within the Asian market. It's around the best peers, they are 4.5 per barrel, NSRP around 5. And they are doing a lot of cost saving to increase the margins. The financial cost, it's a little bit high. If we do the restructuring and look at how can the partners support each other to reduce the financial cost per barrel, there is a good opportunity for the refinery to survive this liquidity gap in this crisis. So all of the partners working into a lot of details, a lot of recommendations on the financial side, technical side came from all the partners. From KPC, there is a lot of recommendation for improvement from Petro Vietnam and from IKC, also our Japanese partners. And hopefully, if this restructuring will go through, I think there's a good chance for the survival of NSRP. I don't know if I answered that question. If you want to add anything, Nasser?
No, I think that's fine. Thank you very much. Let's take this because there are a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to get to as many as we can, more or less in the order that they came in, but some of them are grouped together, so we'll do that. One of the questions is on the KUFPEC KPI merger. Is that progressing as planned? The answer to that is in February, again at the Supreme Petroleum Council meeting just before the COVID crisis came. The Supreme Petroleum Council in Kuwait approved the idea in principle, requested additional information and studies be performed, and we were in the process of starting that with KPC when the COVID crisis came. So I will admit that it is that has delayed us. It has not derailed us. It has only delayed us a little bit. Now, as we are back to work in the head office, physically here, I think that we should be able to move a little bit faster on those plans. So that's where we are on a KUFPEC KPI merger. Another question is for you, Mohammed, KPI Marketing, is if the actual results over the next few weeks turn out to be better than the scenario that we have planned for, scenario A, what are the chances that we might deploy additional capital for CapEx or do additional work than what we've done? Because as you know, we've curtailed quite a bit of CapEx. We've taken about 27% off of the budget on CapEx and about 12% off of OPEX on KPI from the budget, just to cater for COVID. But if the results turn out to be better, and to a certain extent they have been, and you've mentioned some of those, what are the chances that we might redeploy some of that capital?
We all know that KPI looks at its cash flow as one, and we all try to optimize the bottom line of KPI in general. Management do have the discretion to look at the contingency budgets in case specific opportunities occur in that sense, meaning like if we have let me say specific opportunities that we're looking at, we could definitely evaluate. But meanwhile, the CapEx that we have put on that scenario will be the one that we will be approving this year. Did I say anything different? You have a different view, Nasser?
No, I think you're right. It's performance over a few weeks is it's going to be difficult to extrapolate that and to say that that is going to continue for a longer period of time, as we see some economies right now, some countries going into a second wave of infections, and we don't know what's going to happen after that when that happens. There's a nice question here that says, we're processing all admin work paper-free. Can we continue? Yes, absolutely. We do want to continue as much as possible paper-free, and to that extent, and since I've been in my office over the last couple of days, I haven't had any papers come my way. It's everything I do is on the iPad now. So that's certainly a good. I have about 4 or 5 different questions about new acquisitions, but I think I've answered those. What will the new normal look like for KPI in 2021, and how will it impact our immediate plans? That's a very good question. I'll take that one. The new normal in KPI, we're seeing that right now coming back in terms of demand in the stations, the service stations that we have in Europe. That's come back almost to, as Mohammed has explained already, that's come back to almost normal numbers. So I think we're about down 13% versus normal in Italy, and various other regions are plus or minus that number. But it will mean that we have to remain lean. It means that we have to remain agile, and that's why we chose this slogan. Agility is quite important in this business because of the changing market dynamics, changing situation. And the way I see as well, I'll answer for the KUFPEC side as well, is looking at over the future, there's going to be quite a good opportunity, I think, for KUFPEC to take advantage of in the future, especially if we preserve cash and if we preserve our financial position during this period. Obviously, there was very little new investment going on worldwide into new fields. And if you remember, the last oil price crash that happened hasn't been quite 7 years ago. But as you know, typically it's a 7-year cycle from when you start exploration until you actually see that oil come onto the market. So the exploration that dried up in 2015 and 16 and 17, when companies slashed their exploration budgets, all that additional supply that was supposed to come didn't end up coming, and is not going to be here at around 2021, 2022, which is 7 years after the time those companies cut exploration. So we're going to see a dearth of new supply coming onto the market a few years from now. Add on to that a recovery in demand, hopefully by next year, and that should put us in a good position to be able to capture some of that additional supply without being crowded out by excess supply. Yet it remains to be seen, but the focus that we have right now on the company is quite a bit more on exploration. After all, it's in the corporate name, KUFPEC. It's on the building outside, the word exploration. So that is what we're doing, and that's why Mohammed's point, stressing the Gaysun discovery, along with the more significant one, even bigger one at Langleba in Malaysia, are really that important, and we have to continue to do that, and we'll stress quite a bit on that. Let's see if there are plenty more questions. Mohammed, there's quite a bit on marketing. There's one on aviation. Can you tell us a little bit about the aviation business, the challenges facing the aviation business, and what we're doing about that?
Yeah, basically the aviation team put together during the crisis a very solid plan by reducing around 40% of its OPEX. They negotiated with all their logistics from, let me say, let me say, more flexible terms and related to volumes and sales on versus and reduce all the capex. We have also looked at opportunities for growing businesses in other parts of the world. But meanwhile, I can say that we have postponed many contracts related to supply as well. In that perspective, we are hoping by July. July is an important month to understand how the aviation business will slightly recover or not. And we're hoping that we will gradually see some improvements. But I must say the overall reaction of the crisis was a reduction of 45% of the overall OPEX, which is a remarkable amount.
Thank you. A lot of questions on, I'm going to summarize them, but there are about 10 different ones about this, saying basically the same thing. What are we going to do about new energy technology, and shouldn't we be an energy company as opposed to an oil company? And this applies to both KUFPEC and to KPI. I'll answer that question directly. When we look, we are part of KPC. KPC is the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation. We manage the state's petroleum interests and everything that relates to that. So we are in fact a petroleum company. We are not an energy company, and that is an existential question that we've had in the past. And it's something that I firmly believe in, that if the state of Kuwait wants an alternative energy type of business, wants to be invested in that, it can find better people than petroleum engineers and chemical engineers to run and build a business that does alternative energy. There are an electrification. We are doing alternative electricity at our stations in Europe, and that is a different story. That is complementary to our business, and we do that because we have quite a few business customers who demand a full solution of energy to be able to continue to buy our petroleum products. So we are positioning ourselves so that we can capture that type of business demand. But in terms of transitioning to alternative energy, that's really not our game. And the state of Kuwait can start a Kuwait Energy Corporation if they wish to capture that, if that's what our ultimate shareholder wants to do. More questions. There's a question on expats for this financial year. I know there's been a lot of discussion in Kuwaiti newspapers and in other places about, and I'm going to answer this probably in different ways of what we mean by expats. I'll start first with expats working in Kuwait, whether it's in KPI or in KUFPEC. Right now, you've seen that we are freezing new hires of people in Kuwait during this financial year. That will not affect people who are here now, and that's a different calculation. But that is there's no effect on people working in Kuwait. Expats now working in Kuwait. Expats, also Kuwaiti employees working in foreign offices, whether it's KUFPEC or KPI. The expatriation packages and everything else, those are continuing. The problem is just quite literally practical. How do we get new people going to to offices outside Kuwait during a pandemic, during a time when it is quite difficult to get visas and everything else sorted out. So once that gets figured out, sorted out, we will go back to doing that, because it provides really tremendous development opportunities for Kuwaiti employees to go out. We'll try to limit as much as we can expatriation between offices around the world, just to cut down on cost as much as we can during this time. So hopefully I've answered that in the multiple different facets that the question could mean. There's a question on price risk management, and can we look at different ways to reduce volatility of prices by essentially hedging. That's something, hedging the oil price, certainly from KUFPEC's perspective, would make sense, except that from a financial point of view, it would make sense. But from a policy point of view, KPC has restricted us from hedging the oil price, so we're not able to do that. So it means that we ultimately take the price risk as it comes. On the KPI side, we've been able to take advantage of some situations. For example, we've had a couple of contango plays where we were able to generate a few $1 million of profit simply by playing the contango, the steep contango that was happening just recently during the COVID crisis. Additional questions. I need to get a question for Mohammed because I haven't asked him one yet. A couple of questions. People asking about EVP planning and finance from KPI, saying that's been on the schedule. He was supposed to speak today and speak about a couple of issues, and essentially where is he and why why that hasn't happened. I will pass on his regards. Unfortunately, he had a death in the family and was unable to join us for this town hall. So there were a number of questions on what he was going to say. In summary, essentially, the strategy side, I've explained it from the KPI side. I've also mentioned the numbers that he was going to explain, which were reductions that we've seen in the budget, whether it's CapEx by about 27%. Or OPEX by about 12 or 13%. And the numbers are basically similar. On the KUFPEC side, actually, the CapEx reduction is even bigger, but the OPEX reductions are about the same. And those are some of the highlights that Khalid was going to mention. Mohammed, is there a can you say something about LNG markets, especially Wheatstone, where we're going, and what we see the future of Wheatstone, of LNG markets, and especially our asset in Wheatstone, and how that's been impacted by COVID-19?
Regarding the LNG bonanza in Australia, I think we are producing to the high limit of the nameplate. We have a contract with Geo, I think will be ended next year. We are working on this contract with the Japanese. So most facts that our production in LNG doing fine in Australia, and we have looking for strategic wells to continue producing for the more than 10 years. So we're doing fine on this LNG, but the price effect on the LNG, this is what caused our price for the spot. But most of them is we have a price that already selling to the Japanese. I hope I'm not good in LNG and the marketing, but I hope I mention something here to make it more clear.
Thank you, Mohammed. I'll add on to that as well that as we look at LNG markets, obviously it is quite depressed right now in terms of prices and demand. But as you look at markets over the future, most experts will tell you that LNG demand will pick up, especially in China, and Chinese demand has been increasing right through this crisis. That's going to pick up quite significantly over time, and we should be in a better position going forward. As you know, that investment that we have there, it's a plant that is contracted for gas for about 20 years, but can easily produce. The plant can produce another 40 years on top of that if we find the gas, and that's exactly what we're working on trying to do, is discovering gas in the Northwest Shelf that we could feed into Wheatstone, provide that LNG to capture future demand. Mohammed, there's a question back to you on digitalization, and that's one of the initiatives that we haven't cut for this year because of its importance. Can you explain a little bit about that, digitalization initiatives that we have going on, and how that affects our work?
Yeah, I mean, I did mention something during my speech, saying that we were able to mobilize around, let me say, 1,500 people and continue working from home immediately with our system. So this is one point. The other point is the customer in the future is becoming more customer centric, and we need to continue grabbing all the customers from our competitors. Basically, in order to be more competitive, we need to have a competitive edge in our digital from the B2C, for the B2C businesses. That's very important because today we're investing in the digital in our loyalty schemes. We're looking at our pricing schemes. We're looking at also in our, let me say, understanding more about the data of our our customers, understanding their behaviors, and this will enable us to capture more and more customers in the future. This is what we're doing at the moment, and we're trying to do it with a more competitive edge versus our competitors.
Thank you. Mohammed, there's a question that must be picking up on the discussion that you and I probably had yesterday and today. Is there a reorganization that's going to happen with KUFPEC Operations Directorate? And it says, for better focus, efficiency, optimization, to be dynamic and work effectively and efficiently through crisis and downturns. Very good question. We are in the process of reviewing how the organizational structure will adapt to our new strategy, as I mentioned it, which was just approved almost immediately before the crisis happened, and we will adapt that organizational structure to suit the new strategy. We'll have more emphasis on exploration, and obviously quite a bit on our ability to extract value from the existing assets. So hopefully that answers that question. It's also a question about all these companies having huge write-downs of assets around the world, and what's in store for our businesses. Obviously, we run like everybody else does, an impairment test, and we do that in KUFPEC twice a year. But it's really the one at the end of the year that makes the difference in the financial statements. So we are quite a bit away from the end of the financial year, so we probably won't have anything to announce between now and then, and we will see what prices look like by the end of the year and what the projections for prices will be at the end of the year, because right now it is difficult to make any projections over the future. Looking at the time, we have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and one of the questions that just came in, I really like because it's a nice way to wrap up, and this will go out to everyone. What are the key positive takeaways? This is from someone named Abdullah with no last name, so any Abdullah will do. But what are the key positive takeaways that you learned about your two companies, but also all of us, during this pandemic over the last 111 days? It's an open question about work execution, operational excellence, behavior of people. I'll leave it to my colleagues to answer first, and then I'll wrap it up. So let's start. We can start with Abu Sultan, because we haven't heard from him in a while.
So I have. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can you just repeat the question, Bunasir, because.
Sure. The question is, what are the positive takeaways that you learned during this crisis over the last 111 days about work, how it's executed, operational excellence, behavior, how people interact, what we've done well, what we've learned that we can do better for the future?
Okay. I think the takeaway from this crisis, it brought us together as teams. We worked closer together, and the collaboration between the different departments, different partners was huge, because I think we communicated continuously, and we used the net, and we used the conference calls. So we were working together as a team. I think it's more efficiently from home, and also working long hours. That's another thing, but I don't know if that's positive. But we were focusing on delivering. The teams themselves, there was a lot of energy and a lot of, let's say, willingness to complete the task with all the circumstances, and that was a big positive. Then, as I said, the collaboration, that's the most important thing that we take away from this crisis. On the other hand, I think with our partners also, there was a lot of collaborations and a lot of working from distance, where we used to go traveling around, and now we can talk to them continuously on daily basis and use the technology. I think we need to improve on that a little bit, and we need to expand that, and we need to utilize that in the future.
Thank you. Question then to Mohammed. How have you seen that perhaps somewhat differently, or what additions from your perspective, specifically on the marketing side and mostly on the European side?
As I build on what Abu Sultan mentioned, is basically we have to take this as an opportunity to rethink the way that we work, and to take this employee experience and the way that we respect the individuals' differences, home lives, skill and capabilities, and other factors. I think it made us understand how the digital world is extremely important, and how how we were being away from the family for a long time, and how we can definitely balance that probably in the future. So there's a lot of takeaways that we need to make a change in the way that we work in the future.
Thank you. Mohammed?
More than what they mentioned, Mohammed and Abu Sultan, what to stress على the commitment, which I mentioned it in my comments, the commitment of our staff. Really, it was making a difference here. Night, days, 24 hours, we've been on call all the time. The commitment from the staff, from the managers, from the team leaders was huge, really, which is I appreciated. The other things is the teamwork. Really, I felt for first time I was handling the financial and admin. I never knows these managers and team leaders. This crisis give me confidence. I had to know these people more, how effort they are doing, knowing their business better. As we mentioned by Abu Sultan and Abu Muhammad, technology that we have, the internet, things that we can sign, doing all these things during this crisis, making our life more efficient, had most of the benefit that alhamdulillah we gain. I think we have a lot of things, but I think this is most things that I really gain from this crisis.
Thank you. I'll wrap up, I think, now, because we promised this would be an hour and it's just over an hour long. So I'll wrap up with my thoughts as well. What I was struck by during this time is really the corporate spirit, the corporate dedication that we have in both companies. It was amazing to see from my perspective, because I know that I can demand quite a bit of our teams, but it was fantastic to see from my perspective is that the teams were pushing even harder. Because everybody recognized that this was an existential crisis. This was a crisis testing whether these companies can survive. Thankfully, from the KUFPEC side, I can start there. We were able to develop over the past few years a financial cushion where we could withstand this. So starting the year, we had cash reserves that were about $800 million. We have, so that should be enough for us to continue through the crisis, and the crisis now looking like it is slightly better than what we have put into our scenario for our planning purposes. So we will see how that proceeds. But at least the dedication of the teams to work through all of this, worrying about their families, worrying about life in general, essentially, but also making sure that the company is on a strong footing. And that was something very heartening to see. As my colleagues have said, we lost track of when our meetings were being held over this Teams app, day or evening or night. We were all under lockdown, so we all had nowhere else to go, and we were all available for each other. On the KPI side, same thing, with a larger network of people especially in Europe and in Asia, that people really came together very well. I saw it through the crisis management team meetings. I saw it through the work products that were coming out of all of the teams working on the KPI side, and as is no secret, I mean, the refinery performance in Vietnam severely impacted KPI over the past year, especially on top of that was COVID-19, when, as Mohammed said, we saw demand essentially dry up in our locations around the world. Throughout all of that, I think the team's perseverance, strength, and I would say agility through this adversity really has held up very well together. And with that, I'd like to sum up. I think Allah mentioned to me a little bit earlier that we had almost 900 people on this video call, and that in itself is a good testament for a great turnout. Thank you all for joining us. I think this has been good for me, good for my colleagues, hopefully good for everybody on this video call. We have probably 100 questions that we haven't yet answered, and what we'll do is try to lump them in together into major categories, and then issue answers and circulate them for people's benefit. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Munasir. A special thanks for all VPs. Walid ibn Ali, Abu Khalid, you've been missed. Thank you all. It's almost 1,000 Munasir attendees. Thank you for attending today, and always remember, stay safe and healthy and take care. See you.